Hey guys, today we are talking about 5 things that you want to make sure you know before investing in a short-term rental in Florida. I'm Shannon Minsch. I'm a realtor here in the greater Tampa Bay area, and I want to make sure that you know what you're diving into and the important questions to ask when you look into purchasing a short-term rental here in Florida. So let's get to it. Number one is that there are a lot of short-term rental restricted areas around the greater Tampa Bay. Now, most of Tampa, you're pretty good. There's not a ton of restrictions, but there is a lot of communities that have HOAs that may restrict it. More often than not, townhome communities and condo communities are going to have some pretty heavy restrictions on short-term rentals. Every once in a while, they will not, but more often than not, those types of communities are going to have some restrictions because the people that actually live there year round don't want a bunch of transient people, and they're the ones that are the governing body. That's who's going to be making those decisions for that community. And so unless you have a community of owners that are investors, more often than not, you're not going to be able to do short-term rentals in communities that have HOAs. So where can you, right? We're going to sneak over and kind of focus a little bit more beachside, which is Pinellas County. That's the county where you're going to see Clearwater, St. Pete, Tarpon Springs, Dunedin. It's where all of our best beaches in the country are, right? And they're fantastic, but there is a lot of restrictions all up and down Pinellas County, and every tiny municipality is going to be a little bit different. If you are in the unincorporated Pinellas County, meaning you're not falling into city limit boundaries, you only fallen into the county boundary, then short-term rentals are pretty unregulated. They have some basic expectations that they have to meet, but overall, you can own and operate a short-term rental in unincorporated Pinellas County. However, when you get into the cities like the city of St. Pete or the city of Clearwater or the city of Seminole, city of Tarpon Springs, they either do not allow less than 30-day rentals. Some of the beaches might be down to 7-day rentals, but really if you have an Airbnb, chances are you're not going to want a lot of restrictions on the amount of days that you have to rent it out. So a lot of those cities have different restrictions. Cities like Tarpon Springs and Dunedin have very specific zones that allow short-term rentals, and it's very small. Those zones are very, very small. The majority of homes within city limits do not fall in them. And so that can be kind of frustrating too. But there are a few municipalities that do allow them. And one of the ones that I have been seeing a lot of luck lately with is the city of Largo. Largo is very close to Indian Rocks Beach and Bel Air Beach. There's a decent amount, it butts right up against Seminole. There's a decent amount of unincorporated Pinellas County in between Seminole and Largo. So some Seminole addresses will actually fall outside of the city limits and be much less regulated. The city of Largo does have some regulations, but it's mostly safety regulations and regulations that say you can only have one occupant per 150 square feet. So it's pretty minimal as far as you can own and operate a short-term rental in that zone fairly easily. So that actually segues us really nicely into our next topic, number 2, which is flood zones. So all of Florida is technically considered a flood zone. But Flood Zone X does not require flood insurance. And so because it is not required in Flood Zone X, it's typically more reasonably priced than it is in some of the other more likely to flood zones. So I always recommend carrying flood insurance for the record, just because it's really affordable, even in Flood Zone X. I live in Flood Zone X and I have a flood policy on my house. It's not that expensive to carry. If you are in Flood Zone X, your policy is usually substantially cheaper than any of the other flood zone codes. And it's good to have just to protect your asset, right? But it's going to be much cheaper. And so the whole point to these investment properties and to having a short-term rental is to make some money, right? So we want to make money, and the best way to do that is to minimize our costs. So the good news about Largo is that so much of Largo falls in flood zone X, even though it's really close to the beach. So it's really close to Indian Rocks Beach and Bel Air Beach. It sits kind of right between the two. So you're close to Clearwater, you're close to St. Pete, you're close to Dunedin. Like it's all kind of right in that lower central Pinellas County. And so it's super close to beaches. It's typically not in flood zones. Some houses will be in a flood zone. You'll want to make sure you're checking that and doing your own research. But there is a lot of flood zone X in Largo, which I think really helps with maximizing your profit. Number 3 is I want to kind of talk to you guys a little bit about different resources that you can use to do your due diligence. And I like AirDNA. You can purchase, there's some information given to you for free, and then they have some different tiers where they open up more information depending on how much you want to pay for the area. But AirDNA will actually pull information from Airbnb and VRBO, and they will compile it so you can see, based on the amount of days that a home was available to rent, how much were they on average charging per night, and what can expected revenue be for the property, that kind of stuff. So I like AirDNA, and a study actually just came out. AirDNA named a bunch of their favorite, most profitable areas for short-term rentals for 2024, and both Largo and our neighbor to the south, Bradenton, also hit that list. And then there was, I think, Winter Haven, which is kind of near on the other side of Lakeland, center of the state, just a little south of Disney. Winter Haven also was on the list. We had several, I think Cocoa Beach was on the list. We had several in Florida that made AirDNA's best places to invest in a short-term rental for 2024. So I thought that was exciting. For our conversation, I do service Bradenton. I do service Largo. I do service all of Pinellas County. And so we absolutely, like, if you're looking in those areas, I would love to be a resource for you and to help you find your vacation home of your dreams. So, but areas like Winter Haven, Cocoa Beach, those are a little far. I do have partner agents in those areas. If that's something that you're interested in, just let me know, and I'm happy to get you in contact with a short-term rental specialist in those areas. So, but you definitely want to do your due diligence, do your research, make sure you're looking to see realistically what something could rent for per night, and figure out, hey, like, this is what the competition is doing. In order to get this number, do I need a pool? Do I need a hot tub? Do I need a really fun outdoor space? Do I need to be able to sleep more people? Like, look at the competition, and it will give you all of their data to be able to do that and see realistically what their rentals are renting for per night. The AirDNA rental rates do include their cleaning fees, so you just want to take that into account. But it'll break down like how many days is the average stay, so you can sort of configure what that will look like. But you definitely want to do your research. But I was very excited to see that Largo, which is an area I have looked into investing in. I actually put an offer in on a property this week, so for a short-term rental. So number 4 is going to be our taxes. So you may see that the taxes on a property that you are interested in purchasing are really low. And unfortunately for investors, it can be a little misleading sometimes. So we have something here in Florida called a homestead exemption. And what it says is that the homeowner can get up to a $50,000 deduction off of the value of their home. Plus, their taxes cannot increase more than 3% per year. And so if you are purchasing a home and you see that the taxes are really low, it's most likely because that homeowner has owner occupied and lived in that property for a very long time. when the values were really low or they purchased a really long time ago. And so it is not uncommon for me to see a home where it may have taxes that are like $700 or $800. And that is just not what your taxes are going to be when it resets for an investment property, because if it's an Airbnb, you're probably not owner occupying it. So you would not be taking advantage of that homestead exemption. What you want to make sure you do is go on to the Pinellas County Property Appraiser website, and there is a tab for property tax estimator. And you want to go in, put in the address of the property, put in the expected purchase price of the property, and it will ask you if you are transferring a homestead or if the property is going to be homesteaded. You would hit no, and then it will give you an estimate of what those taxes are going to be. And so this is something that is really important. The property that I had put in the offer on, the taxes on it were like $7,400 a year. And I still thought it was worth it, for the record. But it's pretty expensive for like a $300,000 house. So you just want to make sure that you are factoring those numbers in accurately when you are making your calculations, so that you can make an educated decision as to whether or not this house makes sense for you to purchase. Because when I was looking at mortgage estimators, it was only estimating that house's taxes on the mortgage as like, I want to say it was like $100 or something. And it was like 617 is what it actually would have been per month. And so you just want to make sure, again, do your due diligence. Don't trust what the taxes are today, that you'll get that tax rate probably for the rest of the year. That's cool. But you have to know that you're going to drastically increase on your payment. So you just want to make sure, do your due diligence, know your numbers, go to the county website of the property that you are interested in purchasing, whether it's Pinellas County or it's any other county in Florida. And there should be a tax estimator button on their property appraiser website, and it should be pretty simple to figure out what your estimated taxes are for that property, so that you can know what you're getting into and not be super surprised when things adjust next year. So that's number 4. And then number 5, I want to talk to you a little bit about some different loan programs that you can do in order to purchase your vacation property. So if you are going to be purchasing a second home for you to use, when you're down here, you're going to have to put a pretty large down payment down on that because there's just a little more risk involved than it being a primary residence. And so usually your minimum down payment is somewhere between 10, 15, 20%. It's going to depend on a lot of different factors. But you can do that. That's going to be a conventional loan program. And then also you can do something called a DSCR loan. And DSCR loans are investor loans. They're going to typically have a little bit higher interest rates. And it's usually like a 20-25% down payment on them. But it does not use your debt to income. Now, I'm not a lender. I'm not necessarily the one to speak on the ins and outs of DSCR loans, but it's definitely a conversation to have with your lender when you're looking into your options as far as investment properties go, because it might be another tool in your tool belt that you can help get the home of your dreams, and you too can own property where everyone vacations. I want to touch base with you guys a little bit about the areas that I think are fantastic short-term rental opportunities here in my market. And so I've talked about Largo a lot. I'm very pro Largo, obviously, for short-term rentals. Also, Pinellas Park is really close to Largo. And Pinellas Park is another area that has very little short-term rental restrictions. As I mentioned, anywhere in unincorporated Pinellas County is good for short-term rentals. And so that actually includes parts of stuff that are actually St. Pete or Clearwater, but they have those addresses, but they still fall outside the city limits. And so those are good options to look into. Also, we have Bradenton to our south. Don't tell anyone that I said this, but The beaches off of Bradenton are some of my favorite. If I have like a full day to go to the beach, I go down to Anna Maria Island. Like, I just think it's magnificent. I think the beaches are beautiful there. They're a little bit slower paced, a little less crazy touristy. They've got great shells. There's also like downtown Bradenton is adorable, and you're super close to both Tampa and Sarasota. You're kind of nestled right in between the two, and St. Pete. So I think that Bradenton is a great option. And those are probably right now my favorite locations for us in my market around the greater Tampa Bay. I know Spring Hill also came up on that list. Spring Hill is to our north. They're a little northwest of Tampa. Up in Hernando County. And so I also cover Spring Hill. I'd be happy to help with that area. There's some really beautiful springs. Everyone wants to talk about our beaches here, but our springs are magnificent. And we have a lot of really magnificent, beautiful natural springs all around the greater Tampa Bay, but especially to our north, up in the Ocala area, and then Weeki Wachee, Spring Hill. You've got just some really beautiful ones, Homosassa Springs. So there's absolutely some really, really magnificent stuff to take a look at. So Spring Hill is another one that has come up. You can get houses for pretty affordable up there. It is a little bit more rural. You're a little further away from everything. It's a little slower paced, but the natural beauty, the undisturbed Florida up there is absolutely magnificent. And so Spring Hill came up on that list as well. So just to give you guys some ideas of places to check when you are interested in getting a short-term rental in the greater Tampa Bay area. And again, if you have any questions, please reach out to me. My name is Shannon Minsch. I'm a realtor here in the Tampa Bay area, and I would be so happy and thrilled to help you in your real estate goals. So my phone number is 813-370-6300, and my email is shannon@welivewheretheyvacation.com. I'll talk to you guys later. Don't forget to like and subscribe.